So I think the big question here is why bother doing this extra research? A lot of times you find a job description that matches your qualifications. You can quickly submit a resume and it's done, right? Well, in our experience, companies pay more attention to applicants who have done the research, spent the time tailoring a resume, a cover letter if they ask for a cover letter, and then come to interviews prepared to discuss not only their goals, but what the company's doing once we've done their research. So you can save time with this by doing all those extra steps, but only to the ones that are going to be most likely to be a good match once you get through the interview phase. So you don't spend a ton of time applying to a role, get to the interview and go, oh, this does not seem like a good work environment. It could stand out not only with your applications, resume, cover letter, but then when you get to the interview stage, you'll stand out as well as an informed applicant, and informed applicants impress interviewers. And then for you, once you actually get into the role, there's a greater likelihood that you'll have job satisfaction beyond just a paycheck. Some of those other tangibles you mentioned, some of those employee perks, some of those what you're actually able to contribute to and how you're able to see your work implemented, you'll be able to experience some of that and not just a paycheck. So the first step, and this is always what we recommend, and it's probably what you're already doing, is the job description, the first place to start. Looking at what the basic qualifications are, what the nice to have qualifications are, the brief description of the responsibilities of the role, and maybe a little bit about the company. It's a good place to start, but you can find a lot more. For example, I want you to think about if you could answer these questions based on most job descriptions that you've seen, would you be able to say what funding stage they're at? Are they on series funding? Are they pre-series funding? Are they already a public company? What their place in the market is, what their, say, competitive advantage is, what their role is in the overall biotech environment, what the current employees are saying about them, what are the pros and cons of working there, how stable they are. I think we've all been in an interview and gotten that strange question of, where do you see yourself 5 years from now? Well, this is turning it back on the company. Are they going to be around in 5 years? And if they are around 5 years, what's their business plan? Where do they see themselves in 5 years? And how are you going to contribute to that? Salary is still a big thing. What are they likely to pay? And is it competitive with the area? And then you mentioned the skills match as well, but also I think the work environment and what you thrive in, that kind of match. What do they look for in an employee? Who tends to excel in the work environment that they've created? The big thing that we tend to suggest to research first is funding. A well-funded company essentially can last longer and they're more likely to have a strong plan for their product. The reasoning behind this is when we look at biotech investment in the last few years, there was a big boom around the start of the pandemic where there was a huge amount of investment in biotech, which has seen a lot of rewards. But in maybe the last year or so, there's been a little bit more of a trend towards cautious or smarter investing. And so you'll start to hear more about investors expecting a little bit more from a company before they invest, a little bit more of a long-term business plan, a little bit more of a product prototype or some proof of concept before they start to invest. And so they're likely to have that as well with funding, not just that they have money, but that the funding implies that they have these plans in place. Indicators of strong funding are having investors that you can find, either multiple investors or one very prominent investor. And sometimes you'll find that these investors are other biotech companies. So that tells you a lot about the company as well. If there's a larger biopharma company, biotech company that's investing in a smaller company, there's maybe an idea to acquire the company or some of its technology down the line. The amount that they're raising, let's not kid ourselves, $1 million is a lot of money, but a lot of us have also been in a lab or been in a research environment, and we know materials, reagents, it costs a lot. In biotech, $1 million actually doesn't go that far. And where they're at. So are they near market? Are they ready to start launching a product? Are they already at market and then they're reporting revenue, not just funding? The reason it's good for you is a well-funded company should be able to offer you a more secure salary. They're going to last longer typically. They're going to be able to weather more setbacks. They're going to be able to get through, we'll talk about the preclinical, clinical approval, and then manufacturing stages. Because of that new requirement for investing, typically they'll have a stronger plan for the product. And because they'll have a stronger plan for the product, you'll typically have more clarity around your roles and responsibilities. There's always a chance with a company that's still very much in flux and finding its identity and maybe not that well funded, they're still trying to find out what their main product goal is, that the responsibilities on your job description could change. So a company that's very well funded, you can be a little bit more certain that the roles and responsibilities that are listed on the job description are going to be more true to what you're actually going to experience. So a big part of stability is funding, but I would also widen this to that's a part of it. You also want to research the greater aspect of stability and growth of a company. So funding, what series are they on? Are they public? But also longevity in leadership positions is an indicator of a fairly stable company, that the leadership believes in the vision and that they're sticking around in the position for multiple years. And the company's not constantly looking for a new CEO, CFO, CSO, any of those. There's consistency in the product and type of research field. Companies might become unstable because they've taken several leads to clinical trials, which have then failed, and now they have to essentially go back to the drawing board. Was there consistency in what they're working on? And are you seeing that progress? Are they moving forward through those preclinical, clinical approval, commercial steps? The reason it's good for you is nobody likes to be laid off. Once you're in biotech, once you have industry experience, you become very highly in demand. So in truth, people who get laid off from a biotech typically find a role fairly quickly, but it's still not a pleasant experience. And so reason it's good for you is stable company means one that you're less likely to have to go through the job search again. Also, if you're joining a company that's, say, at a preclinical stage and they have a strong and stable plan to grow through the other stages, you're going to get exposed to a variety of job experiences. You're going to get to see more of the industry as the product lead moves through these stages. They're also more likely to have had the time and the feedback from employees to build in some of those employee support programs. So different work-life balance support, childcare, even more the packages they're offering as far as additional equity, how good the healthcare that they're offering is. The other thing to know is where the company you're looking at sits in the market and how competitive it is. There's a lot of that will also go into the business planning. Is the founder or the CEO, are they just another company chasing the same idea, or is there something you can discern before applying that sets them apart? Some of the things that you would look for is a high demand for the product or service. Is the therapy likely to make a big impact in the medical space? Or even if they're not looking at therapies, if they're offering more of a service like a business to business service, is this likely to be in high demand for the businesses that would use it? The two other options is there's either few companies that are pursuing similar therapies, so it's unique in what it's pursuing, or I think we've seen there's a lot of gene therapy companies, there's a lot of cell therapy companies. Sometimes it can become an environment where you're like, oh, it's another CAR T cell company. But do they have a unique approach or process that sets them apart, and can they articulate that? The reason it's good for you is if they're putting this kind of thought into it, there's an increased likelihood of the company's success. And in this case, this success can trickle down to you in potential for stock options, yearly bonuses, or equity if it's not a public company yet. But there's also, beyond just that financial, there's opportunities to then climb a career ladder, either with this company or with another company. Because something we can also see people do is if you've put in a few years and there's not that ability for upward trajectory within the company, but the company is working on something that's really in demand, and we don't want to think that name recognition matters, but sometimes it does. If you have this really competitive company on your resume that you've worked for, you can also jump to other companies for an increase in either title, pay, or both. And so there's that opportunity for career advancement within the company, but also increasing your demand to expand your options for that advancement to outside the company as well. And typically, if they can articulate this market fit advantage and they have a strong business plan, there's typically going to be better management too. If someone's kind of just going by instinct and kind of day to day in the business plan, their management styles typically not going to be of people, typically not going to be much better. Employee opinions are big, especially because there's not only work environments that are very, very toxic, but there's also work environments that are good for some people, not for others. And that can come down to the management style that you prefer, the way that you like to receive feedback or incentives, the way that internal communication in a company is handled. And those are definitely things to look for. But in eliminating the ones that have a very toxic work environment, indicators of a generally good culture, positive employee reviews, low turnover, so the employees are sticking around in the company and not leaving within a year or 2 years. There's employee engagement or involvement with the company in social media. There's evidence of advancement options. So there's not just people from outside the company constantly being brought in to fill senior positions, but there's evidence that people from within the company are also able to see that upward movement. The reason it's good for you is I think we can all agree it's easier to work with happy colleagues than with colleagues who are very disgruntled by the work environment. There's also typically going to be better work-life balance. People are happy with the company. Work-life balance is going to play a big part in that. Into additional aspects, a lot of happy employees, probably better job satisfaction for you once you join the company. But also for professional development, if there's evidence of advancement and low turnover and there's a good degree of employee engagement, once you join the company, there's a good chance you could also pursue that advancement, and that when you ask to develop further skills, to get experience in a different department, or as we mentioned, different aspects of this drug development pipeline, it's more likely that you'll be given the okay to begin to pursue those yourself and be supported in that, which is also a good aspect of job satisfaction for most of us. The last thing that we want to talk about researching is yourself. We've already done a whole workshop on how to consider yourself in your job search, but to quickly condense some of that onto one slide, indicators that you're a good fit, first and foremost, compensation, and compensation that matches your needs. That's not just the bare minimum, but the compensation that's going to allow you to live comfortably in the area where you're working. That the work style, management style, entire work environment is appealing to you. It's somewhere where you feel like you're going to be able to thrive, that you're excited in the product, that the mission of the company, the therapy that they're pursuing, the service that they're trying to get to market. And then the kind of basic job description stuff, that the attributes that they're looking for are a good match for you. Probably not 100% match, but that there's enough overlap there that it looks like it could be a good match for you. Why it's good for you, the obvious is job satisfaction and personal security. But I also want to talk about the personal growth potential, because even the very best employees who bring so much to the table are not going to be able to put their best selves forward in an environment that's not supportive of that. And that's why finding an environment where you feel like you're going to be able to do your best work is so important, because if the environment's holding you back from doing your best as a scientist, as an engineer, as a STEM professional, that can impact the quality of the work that you're doing, whether you mean it to or not. And that can hurt those advancement networking opportunities in the future. So those attributes about what they're looking for and what you're looking for, and that alignment is going to tell you a lot about the work environment and whether you're going to like it and be able to really put your best foot forward or not. And I've just put it here as a list of just some resources you can use. Company websites are a big one, but keep in mind that it is the company's message, so it will be somewhat biased. Social sites like LinkedIn, what they're posting, what people are posting about them, what employees are posting. Crunchbase, industry news sites, Comparably and Glassdoor are other websites that you can look at. First-hand accounts if you want to reach out to people. If you really want to do a deep dive, Securities and Exchange Commission, particularly the EDGAR system, will give you a lot of information about revenue and even some quarterly reports from the public companies. And then you, the personal inventory of what you want in a job.